I'll tell you what, you guys sometimes don't know what racism is like. I'm born and bred in Great Britain, right? I grew up in the 60s and the 70s. There is not the racism that I grew up in. You know, I remember going to school, having skinheads chasing me, bottle boys chasing me. I remember the Asian women not going out on a Saturday the afternoon to go shopping because the football games are on and the fans out taunting. I had my turban torn off. I mean, Dinesh, who you just spoke to, how long have you been in this country?
Well, Manjeet, I'm pleased to hear that's not your experience. But just because you think it's got better, and I'm not disputing that it has for you, it doesn't mean that for Dinesh and others it hasn't got worse. Because
well, I've got Asian friends, I've got Pakistani friends. They don't get it.
But I'm not sorry, Manjeet. I'm not going to let you just sort of diminish what Dinesh was just telling us, because he's not lying. He's not making it up. If in his part of the world, in his experience, things have got worse, then that's something we should take note of.
Yeah, but it's not compared to what it used to be like.
But it is for him. He says it's got worse.
I don't know, but has he integrated?
Come on, you're not going to blame him for the fact that people are abusing him in the street, are you?
Well, I don't know. I don't know, mate, because I'll tell you what, when
honestly,
you don't fit
come
in,
on, man.
No, it's not. I'm 67 years old, mate, right? I lived through it. I grew up in it. I grew up in a tiny little village.
I'm not disputing that. I'm just simply saying that your experience as a person of colour in Britain is not necessarily the same as every single other person of colour in Britain. That's all I'm saying.
It's not, but I know it's not. But
and just because it's yours, it doesn't discredit or diminish what someone else has experienced.
No, but it used to be so much worse.
For you, in your experience, yes, and a lot of other people too. But that doesn't mean that for Dinesh and others it hasn't got worse.
No, I know, but I'm sorry, some people do not help themselves, right? I'm going to be truthful with you, right? Some people do not want to integrate, do not want to...
and that legitimises people abusing them racially in the street.
It doesn't legitimise anything.
We agree on that.
Yeah, we agree on that. But what I'm saying is, when you're in Rome, do what the Romans do, right? I mean, look, listen to me, right? I run my own business for 35 years, right? I've got a son who's in the police force. I've got 3 members in the medical profession.
Yes.
My grandson's just qualified as a doctor, and he can't get work in this country, so he's going off to Australia. I mean, that's unbelievable. You know, we've got things going wrong here, and we're not addressing it.
And
right?
is that the appeal of Farage, you think, Manjeet? That so much is going wrong, and people think it's getting worse?
It's not the appeal of Farage. It's a letdown by the Labour and the Conservative Party.
But that's what I mean.
They've taken us as mugs, right? And this is why people are saying, for Farage, because he might say some things that are off kilter, but he actually is talking the problems we're addressing now. My grandson went to, like the medical NHS. You can't get appointments, you can't get doctor's appointments.
Manjeet, this is a man that has long said he wants to have a private healthcare system for those that can afford it. He's not a great advocate of the NHS, is he?
Yes, but if you can afford it, I can afford it. I still work, right? I can afford it, and we do. Let me just explain something to you. My grandson went for 5 years at Chelmsford Uni.
Okay.
Passed. He did a year at Basildon Hospital. He did a year at Peterborough Hospital and a year at Addenbrooke's. His fiancée, she's a doctor. They're both qualified. They put their resumes out to get work in the NHS because they're going to live in Spalding, so they applied for hospitals around the area. Not one reply back saying...
Manjeet, I hear your point, and I get what you're saying. There's a lot of frustration at the state of the country right now. Is that leading to anger at the main parties who have been in power? Yes. Is it meaning that people think, well, it couldn't be any worse if we gave someone else a go? Yes, I think it is. Manjeet, appreciate the call. Thank you very much indeed. But as with all politicians, you've got to look at actually what they say and what they will do, whether it's funded and whether it's credible.
Do you know, I was so upset when I heard about the incident yesterday in Liverpool, and my heart goes out to the family.
Absolutely.
And then after my initial thoughts of, my gosh, is everybody okay? Has anybody died? I hope no one's seriously injured. My next thought was, I hope they're not black. I hope they're not brown. I hope they're not an immigrant. I hope they're not a asylum seeker, because I knew if that was the case, straight away people would be outside rioting, and none of us would be safe going outside. I'm a black woman, and I thought this is isn't this sad? This is where we've got to in England right now, that straight away we have to be making sure we need to know what ethnicity is the person. It's a real shame that we've come to this situation.
But only if they're white, Shareen, because as I don't know if they disclose that information if the person in custody wasn't white, which tells us something, doesn't it, about the country we are at the moment?
Yeah, we're fully racist at the minute. I'm disgusted, and time that there's some form of atrocity, the first thing that the Nigel Farage fans want to be doing is be going after everybody who's black or brown.
There's a lot of Nigel Farage fans who wouldn't dream of doing that. I don't think we're fully racist, but I think there are enough people who are, that the police feel the need to almost say to those people, don't riot this time because the guy in custody is a white Brit. And I think it's a sad state of it is shocking. It's a sad state of affairs because. And
now,
go on.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Not at all.
Now, what I know is, are we going to be having a conversation about white men who seem to be having a lot of drugs in their system?
We don't.
That's what I heard. Allegedly, he was drugged up. But this is a huge issue. And if this was a black or brown person, everybody would be saying, who radicalised them? Now, I want to know who made this man go and take drugs.
Well, and there's a wider issue there, isn't there? Because you say, and I think you speak for a lot of people of colour, that you were dreading the news that it might have been a Muslim man or a black man or a person of colour. I don't feel that way as a white bloke, and I think most white people, I don't think, oh my gosh, the man in custody is a white Brit, he's one of us, we're going to get we're going to get the blame, we're going to have to deal with the fallout from it, because that only happens if you are non-white. Yeah.
Can I ask a question then?
Please.
Do you now feel as though you have to say to everybody, do you know what, not all white men take drugs?
Absolutely not. Of course I don't.
So do you see the difference now? Because as a black person or as somebody who's visibly Muslim, you then feel like, God forbid, you then feel like, well, I have to then say, I'm not a terrorist. Yes. I'm not horrendous. I've got a good, clean heart. I don't I'm not a radicalised person. And this is what we've now become.
Shareen, I hear you loud and clear, and you are spot on. When the suspect or the attacker is of a certain skin colour, certain heritage, certain faith, too often that gets turned against all people who have the same skin colour or the same faith when they have absolutely nothing to do with it. And that doesn't happen when the suspect is white. And that's why I think it's a sad state of affairs that police felt the need to disclose that the man in custody is a white Brit. Do I think it was the wrong decision? No. But I do think it's a sign of a country where, when it comes to race, something's gone quite badly wrong.
Jamie's in Clacton, appropriate enough, so he could walk into... What pub do you use in Clacton? Let's put it that way, Jamie.
Well, actually, I don't use many at all. I mean, I go there to eat more than to drink.
Oh, right. Okay.
But there's a nice place called the Wick Lodge down near where I live.
Okay. And he walks into the Wick Lodge or whatever it was. What would you say? What would you ask him? How would you react?
Well, I mean, I'd be more tempted to walk out if I walked in, to be honest. I mean, it's because I think that I just don't like the lies. I feel like... Why can't people see through what he's trying to do, which is just
what is he trying? Tell me what he's... Go on, yep.
Sorry, he just seems to say whatever he wants to get people on his side, and then he doesn't follow through on these things. There's no reasoning behind it. There's no logic. There's no maths, as we've seen, behind what he says, and it just doesn't add up. And people fall for it, hook, line and sinker, and it just confuses me.
Jamie, if I was to, and I might have asked you this before, but if I was to stop 10 people in Clacton and say, what sort of job do you think your local MP is doing? Bear in mind, this is live radio, so please mind your language. What am I going to hear?
I think the thing is that there'd be probably 5 or 6 of those people, maybe even more, would say that he's doing a good job, but for the country, not for the constituency, because all they believe in is whatever they're told by him, which is that there's, this massive... influx of immigrants, which there is a problem, but he makes it out to be like there's one on every street corner. And realistically, if you walk around Clacton, you'd be hard put to see one over the course of about 3 days.
Look after yourself. Please stay in touch. I want to hear how it gets on in Clacton. Will you be my Clacton correspondent, James?
Sure, no problem.
Seriously, I'm signing up as my Clacton correspondent. We got a deal?
Yeah, no problem at all.
You're hired. which I think is the exact opposite of what Alan Sugar says. But you're hired. Jamie, talk to me regularly. Thank you.
Okay, right. First of all, I'd like to put a name to what you're describing, which is low-level petty crime and misdemeanours.
I think yeah, okay, go on.
Yeah. So, basically, I think to answer what you've just asked about what Robert Jenrick's up to, I think he's acting a bit like a perverse Batman. And what he's doing is that he will try to get away with his own scam and then says, oh, well, I couldn't get away with it, so all these people getting away with £3 here and there and everywhere else, if we could round all them up, it would equal to what I was trying to get away with, so why aren't they getting away with it?
Maybe I'm running with perverse Batman. By the way, who then in this analogy, who becomes perverse Robin?
I don't know. Probably Boris Johnson's a good suggestion for Paul.
So I don't know that it's not that he's not looking at the actual misdemeanors. He's tapping into something that Patrick described quite perfectly, and it's something that lands differently from... This is what Richard Desmond sent him in a message to say thank you when he unlawfully saved him £45 million in tax. We appreciate the speed as we don't want to give Marxists loads of dough for nothing. That's a man who made most of his early fortune from pornography. So, the idea that Jenrick is some sort of moral arbiter is absolutely absurd, but this is going to work.
But now we're coming on to the topic of what it is that actually drives us balmy with this.
Go on.
And the thing is it's about the fact that all of these sort of low-level crimes are enforced and sociably enforced, so that basically everyone knows what the rules of going into certain circumstances are, and that by waiving those rules, although we have ticket attendants and conductors and all of that, it's incumbent on society to enforce that and witness it and call it out when they see it. And it's because one of your contributors was trying to call the allergy, use the word community. What he was trying to say, I think, and it is accurate, is that you could rely on shouting out in a crowd, thief, and somewhat everyone then turning and engaging with trying to halt the crime.
Yeah.
In the alienation that we face, not just in London but across the nation, is that we don't feel we can trust other people around us.
Maybe this is the point Jamin was making about neighbours and community, and that something, it's proof of something that's broken in the sense of community, collective. I mean, people have always fair dodged, though, and the numbers are coming down. But it doesn't matter if the perception is that people are swinging the lead and getting away with it in ways that they didn't. Chris points out. Hang on a minute. Chris points out Michael Gove is going to be Robin all day long. He's got the look. Perverse Robin, Michael Gove, perverse Batman, Bob Jenrick, honest Bob Jenrick. I love this.
So the question of, and then you'll know this from statistics, people saying that the fare dodging is going down, is that because it's not being reported as much?
It's an extrapolation from what they catch into what that would mean. What they catch from what they check, and then they calculate from what would happen if they checked everybody. That's how you end up at the figure that they end up. He got done for speeding as well, didn't he, honest Bob?
Probably. I don't know
what do you mean, probably? Perverse Batman. He got done
in the Batman bail.
He got done for speeding. Fined more than 1,600 quid. He was doing. It was 30 miles an hour over the speed limit, driving at 68 in a 40 zone in Northamptonshire. I think it was it during lockdown?
If he was in the Batmobile, I'd give him a wave a pass.
Right, perverse Batmobile. An awful lot of people are pointing out a name that you could apply to Robert Jenrick that rhymes with Batman, but which I most certainly cannot say out loud on the radio. I'll leave you to speculate on what that name may be, but I think Roddy got there first.
I've been a lifelong Tory voter, and that was until 2019. When I didn't actually vote at all, and I've always had the belief that if you don't vote, then you're effectively handing a vote to whoever the winner is.
You lose your right to complain in a way, don't you?
As well, yeah. But I think you're also helping, whoever gets into power.
Yes.
But at the time, I couldn't have voted for Corbyn. It was just a step too far.
Sure.
Last time I did vote Labour, but I've always considered myself right of centre. But the beginning of the end for me was when you had the likes of Suella Braverman saying that
on my behalf, she was coming out with all of this really nasty rhetoric. And I'm thinking, actually, no, I didn't vote for that. And, your researcher actually asked me what makes me different to Tory voters that have gone to revolt.
Yeah.
It's because I'm not racist.
Okay. I mean, a lot of them would say they weren't either, but we'll wait until we're talking to them to examine the receipts, as it were.
Yeah, and the lies. But, sort of, as I say, part of the beginning of the end for me was when they sort of actually started going into this clickbait and blaming, sort of anybody but themselves for their failures.
Yeah. It's a tricky one, that. It's a tightrope, that, isn't it? Because, I mean, never explain, never apologise is an effective mantra. It can work. But equally, I don't know what you need to be to pull it off. Maybe a sociopath.
Yeah, the thing is, though, is that they're doing a lot of complaining and no explaining.
Oh, that's a good line. Is that your own?
Yeah, that is my own,
That's mine now.
Yeah, because the line is never complain, never explain.
Oh,
but they are complaining a lot.
Right. And they're never explaining. And it gives Starmer a bit of an open goal every Wednesday, because everything she brings up as a problem, he can point out they created.
Or that they did nothing about for the last 14 years. But
Precisely.
I do believe that there's a lot of Tory voters, like myself, that are the, bit right of centre and maybe feel like, we haven't got a political home anymore.
Because you're not obsessed with immigration.
Exactly. And, and my fear is that if a lot of those don't actually bother to vote anywhere, that gives reform their toehold.
It waves in the even more extreme alternative.
Yeah.
So the breaking point for you was Suella Braverman's period as Home Secretary, when she was essentially accusing anybody who wanted the IDF to stop killing babies in Gaza of supporting Hamas.
Yeah, that, and also, I mean, you sort of mentioned James Cleverly. I thought he was okay.
Yeah, me too.
Until
we had Breakfast Gate.
Well, for me, it was when he was joking about drugging his wife.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that. Yes, that was very unfortunate, wasn't it?
On the day when they were sort of bringing in the date rape.
Yeah, it was a Rohypnol joke, quotes joke and joke. What about the Liberal Democrats? Why don't they pop up in these conversations as much as they should do?
Well, the thing is last time I was going to vote Liberal Democrat.
Yeah.
Because I quite like Ed Davey.
Yeah, me
actually.
too. Yeah.
But when I was actually looking at the ballot paper, my Liberal Democrat candidate had sort of bounced all over London, sort of seems to think that Thurrock is in Greater London, and it's not.
No, perish of thought.
And, and sort of just desperate to get elected, and, sort of had no sort of thing. So I ended up voting Labour. I do actually think it's the best thing that I actually did, because our Labour candidate, MP, absolutely brilliant. She's out and about, and she's talking to the people of Thurrock, which is more than her predecessor did in 14 years.
That's good to hear.
So...
But no way back.
Worked out well for me.
For people like you, there's no way you're going to tack towards the sort of nativist snarls of Nigel Farage and his mates, but there's no way back into Cleverly's offensive comments regarding his wife notwithstanding. Could there be a figurehead who might tempt you back to the fold, to the Tory fold?
I can't. Not that I can see.
Wow.
I'm not a Jenrick fan. I don't think any of them have got any credibility.
There must be one. We must come up with. Can we not come up with one?
Well, I think they all sort of got deselected.
Cummings chucked them all out in 2019. All of the decent ones. I always reflect upon Philip Hammond, not a politician who inspires particular passions in either of us, I suspect, Sue, but to go from Chancellor of the Exchequer to being deselected by your own constituency party in the blink of an eye I think that was the beginning of the end, actually, wasn't it? Now we look back.
It's and I just feel so let down. I feel really sad about it all, actually.
Yeah, I can see.
Your earlier caller was like really angry about it.
Raymondo.
I'm just really sad.
Yeah. I respect both of those emotions, and I completely understand them both as well. Because you're coming at it from different angles. You're coming at it from buyer's remorse, and he was coming at it from a sort of bystander's fury, and they are both completely valid positions. Is Ben Wallace still in Parliament, or did he leave at the night? No, he's gone. So all the names you're sending me, they're not even in the game anymore. And you want a mark of how mad everything is? The rot began with that cull in 2019 when Cummings and Johnson got rid of anybody prepared to tell the truth. A truth that has now become absolutely irrefutable and irresistible. Brexit was going to mess up the country in unimaginable ways. And yet, of course, the people punting the lie that there is a brilliant Brexit, it just goes to a different school, or that we were right to support it, are somewhat on the march. Tobias Elwood, is he still in the Commons? I can't remember. It's not looking good for them either way.